Today, I am joined by Patrick Steele from Intiva. I'm Bobby Ricotta, and we're really going to be talking about cybersecurity here today. I'll start with my introduction here and then hand it over to yourself. So, I've been in cybersecurity coming up in 10 years, acting as security analyst, engineer, working within SOC, and then today really working with managed service providers like Patrick here for cybersecurity outcomes. So I've got a background and a master's degree in cybersecurity, which I think Patrick shares here too. But looking forward to just chatting about cybersecurity today.
Yeah, yeah, and I've been in cybersecurity or security adjacent jobs for about 9 years now. I also have my master's. I've worked from help desk to security analyst to security engineer. Now I'm director of security for Intiva for both our client facing and internal sides.
Awesome. And it's fun to have the different perspectives to sprinkle in what an analyst does, what
Hmm.
engineering means, because I think there are those ideas of
Yep.
what you do, and then even getting into, okay, what is like leading cybersecurity looks like, which I know you've got quite a bit of practice and experience to that.
Yeah,
But I think that
I think it definitely helps leading the team when I've done it before because then I know the struggles that they go through. And sometimes you have this stigma of they don't really know what the trenches are and they're trying to lead me. Well, I've been in those trenches, so I understand.
and it's not a perfect game. There's
Nope.
no one right way to do any of this, which I find as fascinating and difficult and troubling at times too, which I think most people can appreciate because when you say cybersecurity, what it is, it's a lot of different domains and things,
Yes.
which makes tackling it and leading it difficult too.
Yeah, and one of my favorite things is I like building systems and building optimizations and like streamlining things. And with security changing so often, I always have something I can optimize, something I can change, something I can make better. So that's why I like the field, and I know it's just going to continue because our world's just going to keep changing.
Yeah. And I like your note of it's changing more rapidly every day because of things like automation. Like when we hear about machine learning and AI, whereas probably closer to the beginning of our careers and fields in cybersecurity, IT adjacent, um, you could get away with some of these simple point break tools like having the firewall, having MFA, and hey, you're in a really strong place. It's those things still stand true, but it's not the be all end all. We're seeing a ton of different nuances and strategies because cybersecurity is also a business strategy, both to defend and secure from a defensive standpoint, and it's a business for bad actors
Yep.
out there
Yep.
that we see. So we'll be able to touch on that too, which is fascinating. There's a full ecosystem within the cybersecurity domain, both as a defensive position and as a business.
Yeah, one of the things I find interesting that I've found out in the most recent years is these bad actors have legitimate, I say legitimate, these legitimate corporations that they're running doing these bad acting, and like they have the equivalent of Yelp reviews where like, if you get ransomed by this company, you'll get your money, you'll get your stuff back if you pay them because they've got this customer service record of giving you your stuff back. That's just wild that these illegal companies can be so like normal.
Normalize going after others or getting that. The Yelp reviews thing, that is fascinating because, right, they have to have some level of, yes, I'm actually going to do what I'm saying I'm going to do against your organization.
A level of professionalism among bad guys.
Yeah. Yeah, it kind of breaks the what is it, no honor amongst thieves. Well, they have to have a little bit of it to be a working company there. So that's some of the why. I think that's what we basically touched on here, Patrick, is like why cybersecurity? Well, it's growing both as a practice within organizations to stay secure,
Hmm.
So they don't have to go through these painful downtimes when you talk about, hey, why are we doing this? Well, what's the expense of being down for an hour, a day, a week, right?
Yeah.
You can start to calculate some of that. What's the expense of, getting your data back, or the cost of getting new hardware and software, and the hours that takes to come back from some of these. Those are some of the whys of cybersecurity, I would say. I don't know
Yeah.
if you've got more perspective too.
Yeah, because I like to think of it like, life isn't getting any easier as we get older for most people. And if your bank gets compromised and your account gets wiped out, well, your life just got a lot harder. Your social security number and your identity gets stolen, your life gets a lot harder. So it's, you have to protect these people. And because the mass majority of people, I'm sure don't know anything about cybersecurity. They don't understand why it's important. They just know that all of a sudden their savings are gone, or all of a sudden they can't get a new house because their credit is shot. And it's about protecting people and, making sure that our lives are not as hard as they have to be.
Yes. Um, those are really great points, especially when you boil down cybersecurity security. And everybody does it, whether you know it or not.
Yep.
You lock the doors in your home, you close windows, you try to keep your wallet or your ID on hands in a secure spot instead of leaving things out and about. It's the same practice. So I think, Patrick, you do a really good job boiling down these technical and in-depth concepts, and that'll be our approach here for most of these conversations: is how do we just make this really tangible,
Mhm.
give the context, because I think the more complexity you add in anything in life, in technology and security, the more difficult it is to control or secure even.
Oh
And I
yeah.
think that plays into every company.
Yep. And cybersecurity is a very vast, complicated web of things, but almost all of it can be boiled down to something an everyday person can understand. Like you were saying, like locking the doors, closing the windows, if you close your windows, you can still see inside those windows. And that's kind of how you could say that network traffic can be looked at even if you've got it locked down. Just there's a lot of analogies you can make with that.
A lot, and that's kind of the common one: is the lock the doors, secure the windows. And even to that point, it's understanding what the kind of ecosystem or risk profile is. Well, it's essentially almost every single organization at some level has just inherent risk. It's like business
Yep.
risk is cybersecurity risk. So that is all the way at the top with very, large organizations, enterprises, all the way down to smaller shops where you have an identity, right? We
Hmm.
have the local coffee store and the different kind of smaller organizations where, hey, we're not quite the big presence. Well, it's understanding that these bad actors, they know the larger enterprises, they might have security teams, whereas some of the smallers, and that makes up roughly like 90% of all business everywhere, might not have the same,
Yep.
defensive measures or the practice. And you just realize that scope of locking the doors, shutting the windows, it applies everywhere here.
Oh yeah. And like, you think about it, some people might not think they're a threat because, they don't have a big online presence. Well, if you're accepting credit cards and you've got some network presence, if you even let's say that you are a cash only shop and you literally do everything through a physical cash register, someone could still break in and steal your stuff. So I mean, while not cyber necessarily, you still have to deal with security. And if you do advertising, well, then you're putting yourself out there. If you have a newsletter, you're putting yourself out there. And, like you mentioned about the 90% of companies are MSPs, and to clarify that, an acronym, just small, medium businesses. Um, if I'm a hacker and I'm writing some code and I want to make sure to compromise as many people as I can with as little work as possible. Well, if I write this one code that I can send to 90% of America, even if it hits like 2% of people click it and approve it, that's massive profit from the
That is a
bad
good
business
return.
perspective.
And you realize why this is naturally become a business of bad actors. And that's where I think it's unique in the sense that we can talk technology, and I think we'll touch on it, but there's also the psychology of where we're seeing these bad actors go after organizations. I sometimes attribute it to when you talk to some of these defensive engineering folks or offensive folks, like people who go after and do penetration tests, or where are bad actors making success. What we see here too within the kind of psychology of it is the path of least resistance.
Yep.
How easily can I create this code that affects this many people with this wide of a net? Hey, only getting 1% to 5% is an outstanding number for them to be successful when you look at it. And it's that path of least resistance is how well can I do this without putting in too much work and finding there's a lot of different ways to do it.
Yeah, because you think about it. Would you rather spend 20 hours to break in some big company and get $100 million, let's just say, or spend that 20 hours making a script and identifying targets and you get 1 million from 1,000 different clients? Well,
Mm-hmm.
you're making more not targeting the hard target.
Yep. It's like
Now,
seeing the bank vault. Yeah, keep going, keep going.
I was about to say it's also like from the ones who go after the big companies almost feel they're going more after notoriety than the money. Getting their like we said, they're a business. You got to get their name out there. And once their name's out there, they can, expand to do other things. But there's a lot of motivations for these hacker groups. It could be money. It could be exposing what they think is injustice. It could be, you know, some perceived slight against a particular company. There's just a lot of motivations for these guys.
Yeah, there's people behind it is really what you're getting at. And another piece is, hey, if you see a giant bank vault door, kind of your stereotypical idea, is that going to be easier to go through that or the open door that you're walking past on the way? And
Yep.
here's that metaphor of the internet. Everything's accessible here. Where's the open door? Where can I get access there? And I think that plays really nicely into the why, kind of what is the entire ecosystem and how an MSP, right, is that place to say, hey, I've got the team here to understand these complex topics and boil it down and to provide solutions to these complex topics. Because as we noted, there's a lot out there.
Yeah,
So those whys are important.
yeah, and to expand on that, that's managed service providers, which is what Intiva is. That's why we exist, because we've got security professionals, and that makes it to where these smaller companies that can't afford paying for their own security professional can have access to that kind of expertise. And it's just like, we use partners like Arctic Wolf to handle more specific pieces. It's just, you want to crowdsource your expertise, so to speak, and the most cost efficient way, but while also protecting yourself.
Yeah, it's like going to the doctor, right? I'm going to go there. I'm going to get a first opinion, second opinion, third opinion with folks who are doing this constantly. And with it changing so quickly, when you hear it and see in the news with AI or a new vulnerability or threat or a phishing campaign, messaging, we've got to continue to build on that expertise. And which is why we really lean in together between Intiva and Arctic Wolf here, and just bringing that expertise together.
Yep.
That's where we really find success, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about outcomes too.
And to add on to your doctor analogy, you go to your PCP, your primary care doctor, they give you that first opinion, you get your second opinion, but they're not the one doing the surgery. Like you go to a specialist to do the surgery, and then you go to a physical therapist to do the recovery. And so like even within medical for more analogies, you have to go to the specialist for each piece to make sure it's done right. You want to go to a security specialist and then like a incident engineer if you have an incident, and like you want to go to each specialist along the way to make sure that you're doing everything you need to do.
Exactly. Finding out you don't know what you don't know. The goal is to get to that level of knowing, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't protect, you can't really aid anything when you don't have a level of visibility or understanding of what it is. That applies again to a lot of different factors, especially in cyber.
Yep.
When we say, hey, do we know that there's the window over here, that there's this exploit, that this could be potentially harnessed? And it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to be a complex operation that you're running. It could be as simple as, hey, are they trying to send you messages on your cell phone
Yep.
or to your email? And if you click this button, all of a sudden now we're in the game of cybersecurity really quickly.
Yep. Yeah, and I think this is a good initial intro into all these topics, and we'll definitely be expanding upon these in further talks, I think.